Thank you, John, for being part of the show today, Parent with Purpose. I really want you just to talk a little bit about who you are, anything personal you'd like us to know, and then we'll get into your story.
Yeah, so my name's John DeMay. I live in Marquette, Michigan. We're a small community, 25,000 people in our city. We raised our Jordan here for the most part. He went to public school here and was just about ready to graduate high school last year before our tragedy happened. And Jennifer, Jordan's mother, and I were married early on before he even graduated college and had Jordan, and he's our only son together. We divorced 3 or 4 years after he was born. So she and I both have other spouses and other kids. I have 2 young girls that are aged 9 and 7, and Jennifer, Jordan's mother, has 2 young girls in a new marriage. They're 3 and 5, I believe. So Jordan had 4 sisters, and so he was a big brother and good friend and good son and good brother and all those things. Really, he was an all-American kid. I mean, it's kind of taboo to kind of say that, or cliche, if you will, but he really was. I mean, he was a really handsome young man. He was a very good athlete. He was very popular. He was very diverse in his friendship group. He got along with everybody. He was just always that very likable person. And Jennifer and I always had a very good relationship, even after divorcing. We always prided ourselves as parents. We traveled together to sporting events. We always sat with each other in the bleachers, and Jordan shared time week on, week off for his entire life at our homes and stuff. So we were very close-knit, separated family.
Educate us on what happened and what was missing. Just teach us everything we need to know, so hopefully this doesn't happen to other families.
Yeah. So really I guess I'll start with probably social media, right? And cell phones. That was probably where the conversation started. And Jordan had a cell phone early on. Jordan's mother moved away to Tennessee, which is several states away from Michigan, obviously. So when he was around 9 or 10 years old, I wanted for him to be able to communicate with her and have open communication. So I made the decision to get him a phone early. And I don't know that was a good idea or a bad idea. My 9-year-old now will not get a phone at 10, but the circumstances were different with Jordan. So that was our decision to do that. So with that being said, there was a lot of restrictions that we had on his phone. I actually made him sign a contract. I listed out like 12 or 15 things that he wasn't allowed to do or use. He wasn't allowed to talk to anybody on his phone that wasn't in his contacts list. And so all sorts of things. The phone shut down at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. He wasn't allowed to have it in certain places at certain times. So we had all these rules, and it worked out pretty well. And between Verizon, we were using Verizon at the time. The parent controls were pretty good there. And we ended up getting him an iPhone, which gave us the ability to have a lot of additional parent restrictions as far as porn filters, adult language content filters, those sorts of things. So we really doubled down between those two to make sure that his phone was pretty safe. Mm-hmm. As he got into his, earlier teenage years, we were starting to find that he was trying to get workarounds to get, Instagram or Snapchat or whatever on his phone. So we had actually caught him one time trying to use his friend's Apple ID to download a social media app. So we were watching his phone all the time, so we caught those things. And we had a lot of conversations about content, especially because that phone was technically in my name on my account. So I made it very clear to him, if you're sending pictures of young ladies on my phone, that's an issue for me, not separately for being an issue for you. It's a real issue for me. So we had those conversations early on. We had apps that tracked all of his text messages. We used GPS, of course, with Life 360 and some other apps. We had all the parent restrictions on there. His phone wasn't even operable. It would shut down between like 7 and 7 in the morning type of thing. So we did a lot of those things very early on for quite a long time. Up until, he started getting into driving age, close to end of 16, going into 17. And certainly right before he died, he was only 4 or 6 weeks away from his 18th birthday. So at that point, we were pretty much letting him do what he wanted to do. And we weren't too concerned about it. He was a good kid. He was a good athlete. We had zero reason to ever believe that we needed to restrict his phone use at that point. So
tell us a little bit about actually what happened, and how did it actually start to happen, and how did you notice that a lot of it had to do with things that were coming through his cell phone?
So the night that it started was a Thursday night, and we were poised to leave for Florida vacation for 2 weeks the following morning. So Jordan was at his mother's house that prior week, and he had come home to my house at approximately 10:15 on Thursday night. We were supposed to leave after midday on Friday. So he came to my house. That was the last time I saw him, was at 10:15 that night. He was rolling his luggage in to our house on our walkway, and I had passed him heading out to the garage. And unbeknownst to me, 2 minutes before is when he received his first text message from what was a young lady named Danny Roberts on Instagram. So he received that message at 10:15 that night. I had gone to bed. I was sleeping by 10:30 that night. He started those conversations with her then, and then by about midnight, a little after midnight, is when he sent his first picture of himself, a nude picture of himself to her. And then when that happened, everything changed. The light switch happened and the extortion started. Danny Roberts turned out to be allegedly now what we know as Samuel Ogashi, who's been indicted in this case, from Nigeria, black male. He proceeded to extort Jordan for money, threatening to send him the image to his friends and family and friends and parents. They started out with a higher amount. It was in the thousands range. Of course, he didn't have that kind of money, so they kind of negotiated money. Jordan paid him some money out of his checking account. They made him prove that the money was sent, so he would send them screenshots of his checking account. They noticed that there was like $20 or $30 left in there. They wanted him to pay them that money as well, so he did. So he drained his account down to pretty much zero. And then that still wasn't enough. But what was happening in the background, what we know later, is that there are 6 individuals that are arrested, 3 of which are being charged in Nigeria, and then 3 are going to be extradited, or we're working on extraditing back to the United States for federal charges here. But those conspirators worked in unison together to victimize more than 100 victims, not just including Jordan. Jordan obviously was the most serious case, but after the layers of the investigation peeled back, there was over 100 victims. They actually work as a team, and the main person is negotiating and dealing with the victim, and then other members of that team are investigating the victim's social media accounts, finding out who their relationships are. They start building photo collages together, and then they'll use that media to show their victims, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to send. They actually went as far as screenshotting what appeared to be messages being sent to some of Jordan's friends' mothers. So he thought in his mind that those pictures were going out. He wasn't sending money fast enough. He wasn't sending enough money. He believed that those pictures were going out to his friends' parents.
Okay, so from the time he actually got that first text message from this girl until they were actually starting to demand money, how much time had passed?
From the time he received his first text message to the time the extortion started was right around 2 hours.
2 hours?
Correct.
Oh my goodness. Okay, and so from when the time this started until Jordan actually committed suicide, what timeline are we looking at?
He shot himself at 3:45 a.m.
That same day?
That morning. Yep. So he received his first text message at 10:15 p.m. that night. And he died at 3:45 that morning. So less than 6 hours total time.
Yep. In the middle of the night when you're sleeping?
Correct.
If we can go to bed one night thinking everything is okay and then wake up and our children aren't here, we need to be a lot more diligent in what areas. What are we missing? What do we need to know?
I think there's a lot to know that and I think there's like 3 parts to our story, and I think to internet use and social media use in general. Because we're really learning a lot about social media, and we're learning a lot about what's actually happening on social media, including your story and things that are happening with young ladies in social media and the bullying side. There's that piece too. But at the end of the day, I think we really need to communicate with the young people and try to get them to understand how risky and dangerous it is. First of all, we need to talk to the parents and let them know kind of the same thing, and we also need to to talk to law enforcement to try to educate them on how to push the envelope just a little bit further on some of these investigations that may just seem innocent, not necessarily innocent, but seem cut and dry, especially with suicides. They're, with my experience in law enforcement, it is pretty easy to tell for the most part when you have a situation, kids have some mental issues, or maybe they've tried it before, or, so all those investigative things lead you to understand that, hey, this is a suicide case, closed, reports done, and we all move on. Well, we could have easily done that in Jordan's case. And to be honest with you, the only reason why we caught the sextortion piece was that the extortionist actually sent the picture to his girlfriend. And that was the only person that received it. And I don't know when that picture was sent yet. We don't have all the details of the investigation because it's still ongoing yet. So we're only at surface level with the information. Had that picture not been sent to his girlfriend today, we would have no idea why Jordan died. And we didn't even learn about this until 2 days after he died. So the morning I found him in his bedroom up into Saturday evening, we had no idea what happened. Then when his girlfriend discovered the picture had been sent to her on Instagram, she sent it to us, we sent it to law enforcement, and then they ended up getting the FBI involved. And by Sunday or Monday, we had done search warrants and got to Instagram to release the entire transcript of what happened on Instagram that night. And that wasn't an easy process, but they were able to do it. And when we found out about that, it was kind of a relief in a sense, because then we at least had some sort of answer, and we knew that we were headed somewhere. First, we had no idea. We were going on vacation. Jordan loved the beach. I mean, we loved going to Florida. We went once or twice a year, and it was something that we just enjoyed doing. So I just couldn't figure out why this would happen the night before we were going on our vacation for a couple of weeks. So it was pretty devastating.
And there wasn't weeks of depression beforehand. There was no signals, no signs of anything that this was, because literally this happened within hours of taking that first picture.
Correct.
So when we're talking about what parents need to do as far as safeguarding our phones, do you have any suggestions, things that you think we should be doing? So you talked about communication, and that's key to everything. I don't think we talk to our kids enough. Partly because we don't have time, but partly because we're not sure what we should or shouldn't say to them. But aside from that, because there's a lot of teaching, including what I do, and probably, John, in the future, you're going to be starting to do some of this too. But apart from that, on the phones, what do you suggest parents should or should not be doing?
Well, these are going to be really hard conversations, and it's not a popular thing to say. But first of all, I don't believe that any child under the age of 17 or 18 should even be allowed on social media. I mean, I'm just going to start with that. I know it's a hard thing to hear, and people are going to roll their eyes, especially parents. But that's a fact. We do not let our kids go and to smoke marijuana in the states that it's legal for a reason, and drink alcohol in these states, and smoke cigarettes. All these things are set up for a reason. And social media is such a destructive thing for the human body. Young people are not capable of processing the majority of day-to-day things, where especially young ladies, they get a social media account when they're 14, and they post a picture of themselves and they get 5 likes. And then a week later, they post a picture of themselves with their head tilted and their little eyebrow, and then they get 15 likes. And then they do duck lips, and then they get 30 likes. And then before you know it, they're wearing a V-cut shirt and they get 500 likes. So it progressively changes how you interact on social media. Let's be honest, there's really not a lot of information on social media that's even accurate or true. People are posting certain parts of their life, but not other parts. So a lot of it's just all lies, honestly. And we could shut the internet off today, or at least social media off. And to be honest with you, every single person would probably just live a little bit better lifestyle. The only people that are benefiting from social media are advertisers. And that's why social media is there. 96% of the income is coming from you as a user, because you're being sold ads by Fortune 500 companies. So in my opinion, if you're a parent, you really need to have a serious conversation about yourself of if you think your child needs social media. My answer is they do not. I'd love to see some national laws come down the line that would restrict children from having social media. If they want to do it when they're 18 or when adults, have at it. Hopefully you've raised them good enough to where they can handle that stuff, but kids don't need to be on there. So that's first and foremost. So I think you have to have an honest conversation about yourself and your parenting if you're going to let your kids be subject to what's actually happening on social media. 2, if you're going to have social media, on your phones and technology on your phones. I think the big thing that is missed is access to the world at their fingertips all the time. And they certainly don't need it in their bedrooms at night. They don't need to be seclusive with their internet use in their basements and their playhouses and all these places where there's no supervision. Parents are starting to realize that, you know, the social media stuff and the technology needs to be done in the open. So I think that's something to be aware of. You know, our kids will never, ever have technology in their bedroom ever. Not a TV, not a tablet, not a phone, nothing. They will never have it in their rooms. If they want to have it in their rooms, they can move out of the house. That's how we are going to go forward. Having a phone is great. There's a lot of benefits as a parent, and any parent that has a, you know, 15 or 16-year-old, especially when you start driving, having a phone is extremely helpful, and there's a lot of great benefits to it. But you also need to, with what they're doing on those phones and what they're being subjected to on the phones, they're very much at risk in a lot of different levels. So when it comes to that, I think having the parent controls and the GPS and all those things is probably a really smart idea to try to uphold and maintain up until they start getting into adulthood.
So now we know scientifically that the brain is not completely developed until they're 25. So, and the last thing that develops is impulse control. So you are talking about somebody who is just shy of 18 years of age. My daughter was just over 18 years of age. How do we protect those ages, right, from 18 to 25, when, as far as the law is concerned, they're an adult? And so as parents, I did what you did and went, well, you know what, you want to give them a little bit of leeway. You want to let them start getting, you know, their feet wet with some of the social things that, you know, we're a little leery about because we know the things that can happen out there. How do we handle that age group between 18 and 25? Any suggestions on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And a lot of people, I tell them that my story and Jordan's story is kind of a unicorn, right? Because of that, it was such a slip between the cracks age. I mean, if Jordan, you know, said, hey, I want to move out tomorrow, I'd have let him. He was well enough to do that. It's a really hard question to ask. And I think I would lean back on what you said about having conversations with your kids a little bit more. I mean, we just can never have enough conversations now. When I was a kid, and probably when you were a kid, the worst thing that we ever had to worry about, or our parents had to worry about, was the candy man, you know, and they talked about the candy man. Don't get in the candy. Don't take candy from strangers. Don't get in someone's van. I mean, okay, great. Check. We're safe now. And I ran around this community on my bike when I was 6 or 7 years old all day until till dinner time at 5:30, or when the streetlights came on in the summer. We never had to worry about this stuff. Now, young people, even adults, are being subject to major world things that are happening right at our fingertips instantaneously. And, you know, if anybody tells me different, I'll tell them to Google Jordan DeMay, because national spotlight for the last little while, the messages and the outpour of parents who are just in dire straits with this stuff, all the way from, hey, this happened to my son 2 days ago, to my son died, or my daughter died. And there's so thousands and thousands of cases a day in the United States with this stuff, and you just can't keep up with it. So the only way to really stop the bleeding is to go to the top and try to figure something out. And, you know, that's kind of where I'm at with social media. I'm a little frustrated because they're just allowing it to happen, you know, and unfortunately it just boils down to money and user count, because there's a lot of really easy things that social media could be doing, simple as verifying users. You shouldn't be able to go and make 100 fake Gmail accounts and then go make 100 fake or 200 fake social media accounts and then just go and victimize people with them. A lot of these extortionists, and I think ours included, they used a hacked account. So somebody's hacking accounts because the security is not good enough on the social media platforms, and then they're selling those hacked accounts to people that victimize my son. And then when there's issues and people are reporting them, the user down right away. They're letting it open. It goes into some sort of flagged file at Instagram or Facebook. And then how long does that take them to go review it? You know, a day, 2 days, 3 days? How many people are they victimizing in the meantime? There needs to be some accountability with them. They're protected by our federal government under Section 230 in the United States, which basically was evolved back when Facebook was an infant, saying, hey, we have this really cool platform, but we can't monitor all of our users, and we can't be liable for things that they come and do while we're here. So the government said, yeah, that's fair, you know, so we'll protect you from being sued and different things because of this. But that was back in the early 2000s. Landscape has changed, and so now we need to revisit that. And it's been a topic of conversation in our Congress and Senate here as of the last few years anyways. But we really need to get serious, because if we can't even get serious about social media right now and trying to put our finger on it, wait till AI technology takes over. They'll be able to rebuild me that it isn't even me, and then use me to extort money from my family if they wanted to.
Right. So now we have another whole layer and level of things we have to teach our kids.
Right. And that's important to tell kids. They understand that that's how it works. I mean, we can't run and hide in the shadows all the time and not live our lives, but we need to be cognizant about the technology and what it can actually do.
I wasn't aware that on Instagram you could send naked pictures. Is that something you can do and it not be flagged instantly?
I don't know in Jordan's case yet, only because I don't have the full details of what actually transpired that night, because it's an ongoing investigation. So I don't know specifically if the image was sent through Instagram. A lot of times what happens is that the fake accounts and the stolen accounts are victimizing people, but then they move to other platforms.
Right. Okay.
So they may have moved to another platform for that, or they may have exchanged on through the phone, but I believe it to have been transferred through Instagram. But again, I don't believe that those images are caught immediately. So they get sent, they get moved around. As soon as it's sent, they grab it, and then they have it stored on their device. So they just need a copy of it is all, and it just takes a split second. So it could take days for Instagram to catch that and pull it off. And kids, young people, that's how they sexually communicate now too. You know, if you put 1,000 kids in a gymnasium, a quarter of them have sent naked pictures to one another, whether it be boyfriend girlfriend stuff or maybe trying to get to be boyfriend and girlfriend. That's how they sexually communicate now. So it's not uncommon for these things to happen in their generations. I think that just letting them know that every single keystroke on the internet, on your phone, on your laptop, on your social media is forever. And Instagram, in our case, is a perfect example. Before Jordan died, he erased everything. He deleted all of his content off his Instagram account. He deleted his pictures off the phone that he took. Everything was gone. We would have never known had that extortionist not sent that picture to his girlfriend, because law enforcement comes in, looks at the devices, nothing's on here, no foul play, it's a suicide, end of story. So we had to go get search warrants and go to Instagram, and guess what? They have every single keystroke that was ever done. That entire transcript is available. At the end of the day, all that information is on those platforms forever. So that's important for young people to know. Even though you think you're deleting it off your phone, you don't think Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat keep copies of that stuff, it's there forever.
You had a really loving, caring family. He was a big brother to 4 sisters. He knew he was a role model. He was a good kid. He was athletic. And yet, within 6 hours of first being contacted, he committed suicide because he was so convinced that these people were going to actually do whatever they could to ruin his life. He believed them enough that he took his own life instead.
He did. He got to the point, and he said it. He said, I can't say anymore. I'm going to kill myself right now. And their response was, good, do it fast, or we're going to make you do it.
Wow.
That was the last transmission they had, those guys, and he ended up taking his life. The message to the young people, and it's really, really hard for them to understand because they don't have life experience yet, but what they believe in Jordan, you know, for Jordan too, his life as he knew it in that moment may have been over.
Right.
It most likely would have been. I mean, he would have been embarrassed for a long time, but hey, you know what? 6 months later, he'd have been at college, and he and his girlfriend probably would have been just fine. They would have broke up for a day or two, and they would have gotten over it, and it would have been a thing, and life moves on. But unless you have life experiences to teach you that, you know, tomorrow's a new day, you just can't think of it. And Jordan himself, he was so willful and so proud, and he did not want anybody to see him in that way, and made a horrible mistake. And he felt like he needed to be the man and pay for what he did, you know, and unfortunately he took his own life, and that's the tragedy here. But the silver lining of the tragedy is that we're really able to put some legs to this topic and maybe force social media to rethink how they let people interact on their platforms, and how especially they victimize children on their platforms. So I'm hoping a whole lot of good change comes down the line from all this.
I'm sure it will, John. I'm absolutely sure that it will. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing such a difficult story, and being such an open book, because that is the only way we're going to learn. So from Parent with Purpose and from me personally, I want to thank you.